Hello, this is Kevin Benedict, SMAC Analyst with Cognizant, and SMAC's the acronym for?
Social, Mobile, Analytics, and Cloud.
You said it. All right. Thank you, Sahara. So again, Sahara Alexis is the Head of Advisory Services for Cognizant Mobility. We're going to be talking about predictions, and I want your predictions. You've been in the mobility industry for some time now. You've seen a lot of changes. What's different from your vantage point or from your view in 2013 than perhaps 2012, 2011? What's different this year?
I would say that this year is going to be the year of people trying to figure out how to control mobility.
Control mobility?
Yes, last year was about educating people about mobility.
Okay.
People were very excited. People started to develop apps, even more apps. I think this year they're like, oh my gosh, I have all these apps. What do I do now? Because I can't maintain from a cost perspective, the development of all these different apps. Or which ones are good and which ones are bad.
I know there's people out there that have 20, 30, 40 apps, and they have a list as long as their arm of other apps that people are asking for.
Yes. So how do you prioritize and calibrate?
I had a CIO tell me the other day that internally they do an estimate that every app is going to require a full-time person to support it after it's delivered. So if you do the math, right, 39 apps, you have 39 full-time equivalents that are there to support it. I don't know if that's across the board, but that's a lot of work.
Yes.
Because especially if they're in different environments, different tools were used to build them, different integration strategies, different security methodologies. Some were built in-house, some by contractors.
Right. So the other thing I would say is companies stepping back and looking at their mobility strategy and figuring out, one, do I have one?
Yeah.
Is it still accurate?
Yeah.
Two is, can we standardize how we go about developing these different applications so that we become more efficient in our development process and that we minimize the level of support and effort that it takes to roll out these new applications overall.
So what would be some practical ways they could start finding efficiencies and try to drive economy of scale?
Having a common development process is one. Defining standards around security integration will be another. Understanding ultimately what their goal is for the mobile application and prioritizing and having it be vetted. Just because it sounds like a great idea may not be the reason why you want to develop an app. And also, I would say, is people deciding when the app is no longer of use. Retirement of an app. That's something that people haven't spoken about.
And then how do you make sure that you've plugged that data leak from that app that's no longer being used?
Well, that's where you get into the maturity and the sophistication of your app. On the onset of 2011, 2012, people were just getting out apps purely because of function or feature.
Right.
Now you have this evolution towards personas and changing application development towards behavioral changes of the individual or the end user that's being impacted by the mobile application, so that they can have efficiencies, do exactly what they need to get done in the most productive way possible. And building multiple mini apps around that, potentially.
I've sat in meetings with SAP executives which predicted that just about every interface to any of their inventory of software applications would ultimately have a mobile interface. They're literally looking at thousands of different mobile apps to access their inventory of software products. That's a lot of work. And if those... again, if we were to identify the efficiencies, you're saying around security, around development methodologies.
Yes.
You manage the distribution and access and roles and responsibilities for each of those apps.
Yes.
What else goes into that mix?
I would also say what we call rapid deployment. One of the things that's been evident in the marketplace is that there's a lot of demand for mobile, but yet there's not enough capabilities and skills in mobile for everyone to serve everyone. So you have to figure out how you're going to gain the economy of scales. Should you build? Should you buy? Or should you outsource your development?
Right.
Having standards in place will allow you to pick and choose what you want to do when appropriate, because not all applications will be done in the same manner.
So that sounds like there's a mobile strategy required.
There is, or even the opportunity to sit down and say, from a preliminary perspective, what am I trying to accomplish? Mm-hmm. What am I going to build in as my own capabilities, and what should I leverage from somewhere else? Because most organizations will not be able to build out a fully functional mobility suite of skills and maintain it.
Right.
That's just too difficult to do. So you need to pick and choose which capabilities you want to have in-house and master them.
Are you seeing companies ask for simple productivity apps this year, or is there a trend going into more complex and custom apps? What are you seeing from requirements that are coming across your desk?
Well, I would say there will always be that kind of need for productivity apps, mm-hmm. right? They may not need to have 20, but you'll need to have some basic ones like T&E. That's the bane of everyone's existence, right? That's something that people will always want to have, and maybe timesheets, mm-hmm. that sort. Now you're getting into role-based type of functions that people are looking at. So if you're in sales, if you're in field operations, if you're an executive trying to accomplish certain things, or if you're running a plant and you want to be able to have visibility on all the different measures within your plant. So those are all role-based type of activities that people are starting to look for because they have more powerful impact on your end user.
That's going to be a lot of work, Sahara.
Yes, it will be a lot of work, but if you take the time to decide where you want to play and how you're going to play, it makes it easier for you to navigate, and it's easier for you to plan in the future, as well as to budget for the future of what kind of skills you need to have in place.
Last question.
Yes.
Would you tell a company they need to have all of these things in place before they do their first app, or is this something they should be thinking about having in place by their second or third app, or what's your feel for this?
I would say it really depends on the maturity of the organization, mm-hmm. and how they take on emerging technologies. I think people should get started on a mobile app because mobility is here to stay, and either you're on the bandwagon or you'll be left by it.
Right.
So don't hesitate to doing a mobility app. But when you're doing it, also keep your eye out on the future about what the impacts are of doing it the way you're doing it today. Right? How can you scale? Right? How can you take on emerging technologies? How can you address the fact that you may have 10 applications you want to do? Do you need a platform for that? Those are all things that you need to consider. Unlike certain ERP systems and things of that sort, once you've had those implemented, you kind of could sit back and say, I'm done until an upgrade comes along. With mobility, there's things that are constantly in flux. So what I say to people is that everything is in iterations. It's a learning experience. And what was valid necessarily 6 months ago may not be valid, 3 months from now. And so you have to make sure that you're constantly aware of the impacts that different technologies, different functions, different players and vendors in the marketplace are having on mobility.
Sahara, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insight with all of us.
Thanks again, Kevin.